Hi, grade fives. Welcome back to another read aloud with Lemony Snicket's File Under 13 Suspicious Events. I will be posting the solution to the last chapter in the comment section under the appropriate quiz. I have hair. So check out the solution there. Today's chapter is called Bad Gang. Bad Gang. This is an account of an eventful weekend I had unchaperoned. I was unchaperoned because S. Theodora Markson decided to leave one Thursday morning to visit her sister, who lived in a charming cottage out in the country with a beautiful garden and a darling teacup collection, and no little boy underfoot to muck up everything and ruin their fun. That was me. I was going to stay by myself all weekend and not make any trouble, and maybe she would bring me a teacup as a reward if I did. That's all right, I told her. You don't have to steal your sister's teacups on my behalf. Theodora glared at me and put her suitcase in the back of her roadster, which was parked crookedly in front of the Lost Arms. My chaperone drove around in a green car that was so dilapidated I was afraid it would fall apart every time someone touched it. I expect you to be good and follow the rules of our organization. It's against the rules of our organization for the chaperone to take a vacation and leave her apprentice all alone, I said. You sound like a person who doesn't want a brand new teacup. Most people sound like that, I said, but Theodora just shook her head and put on the leather helmet she always wore when driving, which captured her wild hair about as well as a handkerchief would capture a swarm of eels. She was a curious sight, S. Theodora Markson. She always was, and I was curious about her. What does the S stand for? I asked, over the ragged sound of the engine. What? She shouted back. What does the S stand for in your name? See you Sunday, she said, and puttered off. I watched her go and then waited a sensible amount of time in case she forgot something and had to come puttering back. She didn't. I went back up to my room, and I'm not ashamed to say I did a little dance. It was the sort of dance you do when you're finally alone in your room. It was a short dance, and I had plenty of time to head on over to the library and read as long as I liked. That was Thursday. The next morning, I took a walk to the oldest neighborhood in Stayed by the Sea. I didn't know what I was looking for. I was thinking about my biggest case, a mystery which had started long before I'd arrived in town. Most of the clues had vanished. I thought perhaps a good place to look was the town's first business district, which was a few blocks of buildings around a small paved courtyard. The buildings had once been very impressive and now looked only as if they had once been very impressive. Weeds had come through the cobblestones of the courtyard, pushing them aside like their turn was over, and little metal chairs where people had once sat and sipped drinks were now scattered and rusty. I found something straight away, but I'm sorry to report it was Harvey and Mimi Mitchum, Stayed by the Sea's only police officers, and the sort of married couple who argued from the moment they woke up in the morning to the moment they fell asleep in the middle of some cranky sentence. They weren't very good police officers, but to be fair, it was probably because they didn't have enough time to do a good job. They were too busy arguing. This particular Mitchum argument was taking place in front of a shop window which had been shattered, leaving jagged fragments of glass everywhere on the sidewalk. According to the sign, the store was called Boards, and sure enough, the man waiting for the officers to stop arguing was holding a thick plank. And I'm telling you, Mimi, Harvey Mitchum was saying when I approached, that he only thought he heard the heart beating in his room. It wasn't actually beating. You're wrong about that, Mimi said. I read the story better than you did. You can't read something better, Mimi. That's absurd. Then why do you think the store was called Broads when we first got here? I just glanced at the sign. That's because you were thinking about broads. That's why. Excuse me, I said, and everyone turned to look at me, although only the man holding the board wasn't glaring. Move along, Snicket, Harvey said sternly. This is police business. The big, bad brick gang has struck again. Who are the big, bad brick gang? I asked. Not that it's any of your business, Mimi said, but the big, bad brick gang is an anonymous group of vandals and other malcontents who strike in secret in the middle of the night with clever strategy and bricks. We cannot know when they will strike next, and no one will ever catch them, The whole world knows the menace of the big bad brick gang. I've never heard of them, I said. The Mitchums looked at each other as if they were a little embarrassed. Confidentially, Harvey Mitchum said, using a word which here means please don't tell anyone. We hadn't heard of them until this morning. My son has mentioned them before. Wrong voice. My son has mentioned them before, said the man with the board. When we heard the crash in the middle of the night, he guessed it was the big bad brick gang who was responsible. He called into the shop through the shattered window. Kevin! A boy about my age stepped forward, holding a board in each hand. Tell the police, the man said. Tell them what you've heard about this big bad brick gang. Not much, Kevin said. Just that they're an anonymous group of vandals and other malcontents. Vandals are people who destroy property, and malcontents are people who are angry enough to do such things. My son has been telling me that we should get a weapon to keep the store safe from this gang, the man said, using the plank to gesture down the street. He's always going on about fencing and swashbuckling and all the other nonsense he gets from pirate books. I've told him it's foolishness. It is foolishness, Mimi said. Weapons would be of no help. We cannot know where they will strike next. Did they steal anything or just break the window? I asked. They stole a board, the shopkeeper said. It's our best-selling model, and it looks like this. In fact, this might be it. It's hard to tell. But there was a board in the window we had on sale, and I think they took it after they threw the brick. I'm glad that's all they took, I said. Don't be glad, Harvey snapped. The police force of Steam by the Sea will do all we can for boards. It's an old family business. I'm Bob Old, the shopkeeper explained. My family has run this business for years. I'm grateful that you came, officers, but I'm not sure what the police can do. That's true, Harvey said. No one will ever catch them. How do you know all this about the big bad brick gang, I asked, if you've never heard of them until today? Mimi reached into the pocket of her police uniform and handed me a wadded-up piece of paper. This was wrapped around the brick, she said, and I uncrumpled the note and read what it said. Hello there. We are the Big Bad Brick Gang, an anonymous group of vandals and other malcontents who strike in secret in the middle of the night with clever strategy and bricks. You cannot know when we will strike next, and no one will ever catch us. But the whole world knows the menace of the Big Bad Brick Gang. Yours truly, the Big Bad Brick Gang. Just because they wrote that note, no one will ever catch them, I said, doesn't mean it's true. You see, Harvey said to his wife, you don't read very well. What this foolish kid said has nothing to do with how well I read, Mimi said, and Bob Old walked back into his store as the Mitchums started up arguing again. I decided to leave too. Listening to adults argue was a waste of a perfectly good unchaperoned day. Instead, I found Moxie Malahan and we played a dice game her mother had taught her. Moxie's father went to bed so early that she was unchaperoned most of the time. It was the sort of dice game you could play for money, but we didn't. If we had played for money, I would have owed Moxie a fortune. That was Friday. I woke up early and had breakfast at Hungry's, but as soon as Jake Hicks told me the news, I left my frittata half finished and hurried back to the old section of town. There was another shattered window and another shopkeeper out front. This time, the sign read, Swords. And this time, the Mitchums were standing there arguing again, although this time they had their son, Stu, with them. Stu Mitchum was a nasty piece of work. Like a cactus, the best thing to do with him was ignore him, no matter how much he kept poking me. Here you are again, Harvey Mitchum said. I'm beginning to think you're a member of the BBBG yourself. I was already a member of an organization that sometimes struck in the middle of the night, but I saw no reason to volunteer that information to the Mitchums. I heard they struck again, I said. Mimi shook her head and kicked at a piece of glass. A distinguished family business, she said. I can't believe the BBBG dared to strike here. I'm Muriel Distinguished, the shopkeeper explained to me, and she began to sweep up the broken glass. Was anything stolen, I asked. Just one sword, which we had displayed in this window, Miss Distinguished said. Similar crime, similar note, Harvey said, waving a piece of paper. Hello there, we are the Big Bad Brick Gang. You probably can't believe we struck here, but we did. You'll never figure out what makes us choose a place to strike. By the way, if you want to call us the BBBG, that's fine with us. Yours truly, the Big Bad Brick Gang, aka the BBBG. We'll never figure out what makes them choose a place to strike, Mimi said. What in the world do boards and swords have in common? Nothing, Stu said. That's right, son, Harvey said proudly. You're a genius. They rhyme, I said. Mimi frowned. What rhymes? The names of the stores, I said, and turned to Muriel distinguished. Are there any other stores with similar sounding names? There's an electrical supply store, Cords, just down the street, the shopkeeper said, and across the square is Gourds, where I buy all of my decorative squashes. There used to be a Scandinavian place called Fjords, but it went out of business last winter. I turned to the Mitchums. The crimes of the Big Bad Brick Gang appear to be following a pattern. If you like, I'd be happy to help you keep an eye on those 2 other businesses. First of all, let's call them the BBBG, Harvey said. And thirdly, we don't need your help when we have Stuart around. Our son is smarter than you and more handsome. Isn't that right, Stewie? You're so nice to me, Daddy, Stu said, and when his father chuckled and turned his back, he gave me a big, hard poke. That was Saturday. I asked the Belrafone brothers, known as Pip and Squeak, to drive me around the old neighborhood as soon as the sun came up. All was quiet at Cords. Nothing was amiss at Gourds. But then, through the taxi window, I saw more shattered glass, and the Belrafone deposited me in front of another vandalized business with a stunned shopkeeper and police officers arguing in front of it. There were pink and red petals on the sidewalk, along with the familiar sight of broken glass, and painted petals decorated the sign over the door. I looked at the name of the business and sighed the sigh of someone who's wrong and sighs about it. And I'm telling you, Harvey, Mimi said, the dead bird is what changed her mind about her mother's old suitor, and that's why she came back. I don't know why you bother to read at all, Harvey said, when you understand no more than a garden slug. I'll slug you if you keep talking like that, Mimi growled. I can't believe you said that. Apologize at once. You're the one who got me angry enough to say it. Apologize for provoking me. Apologize for provoking me. Apologize for provoking my provocation. My shoes crackled on a piece of broken glass, and the bickering Mitchums turned to glare at me. You have some nerve coming around here, Harvey said. Boards and swords don't rhyme with the name of this store. It's not even half rhyme. Chrysanthemums, Mimi said, is a respectable family business, and we are helpless to bring the BBG to justice. She waved another piece of paper, but I didn't need to read it. I was sure it said that the police were helpless to bring the gang to justice. I'm Lemony Snicket, I said to the shopkeeper. I'm sorry about what happened to your store. I had a theory about what was going on, and I'm sad to say I was wrong about it. I assume you're Ms. Respectable? The shopkeeper gave me a curious look. My name is Smith, she said. Delphinium Smith. Our family happens to be respectable, but it's not our name. Oh, I'm sorry, I said, although I was used to asking the wrong questions during my days in Stained by the Sea. Was anything else stolen, Miss Smith? Or was anything stolen, Miss Smith? My daughter's just checking, the shopkeeper said. The brick almost hit the bed where she slept last night. She dropped her broom for a moment and cupped both hands to her mouth to call into the shop. Florence! A girl emerged from the shop, giving her mother an apologetic look and holding a book I recognized. Sorry, Mother, I got distracted by a good part of my book. Peter is just escaping from the Barbados and has decided to be a buccaneer. It's about to get even better, I said. Don't tell me what happens next, Florence said. I hate having a book spoiled. I would never do such a thing, I said. Another bookworm, the shopkeeper said to me with a grimace. I don't know where Florence gets those books. Personally, I think literature is garbage. None of my daughters are allowed a library card, and Florence can't have a bookshelf in her room unless she builds it herself. I'm sorry to hear you say that, I said. It makes me less enthusiastic about telling you I've solved the crimes. But perhaps the guilty parties will work together to repair the windows and explain their behavior. Hold on, Harvey Mitchum said. Are you saying you know how to stop the Big Bad Brick Gang? Because according to something I read recently, no one will ever figure out how to stop them. They're not really a gang, I said. Just 2 people in cahoots. Name them, Mimi said, so we can arrest the cahooters. Yes, Harvey said, for once in agreement with his wife. We can't have any cahooting in this town. I didn't tell them, nor did I tell Theodora anything that evening when she came home and asked what I'd done all weekend. I told her nothing, and she gave me a teacup decorated with an ugly pattern. Unchaperoned people often do things that respectable adults don't understand, and the unchaperoned people like to keep it that way. The gang probably wouldn't strike again, I thought, putting my teacup on the floor where I might carelessly step on it in the morning. And that was Sunday. So, I wonder what he's figured out. I think I figured it out. Did you figure it out? Can't wait to find out the conclusion. In the meantime, make sure you go to Lemony Snicket Chapter 5 quiz to answer questions about the chapter and check out what the solution was for the last chapter. Sorry about stumbling over some words there today. I was a little mushroom mouth. It's early in the morning. Talk to you soon. Hope you're doing well. Miss you.